My name is Emily Stone, and this happened to me in Columbus, Ohio. I was 23 when I signed the lease on my first apartment without roommates, family, or anyone else nearby. It sat above a small insurance office in a quiet part of town where every building looked the same: brick walls, narrow parking spaces, and old trees growing too close to the sidewalks. I worked reception at a dental clinic downtown, so my life followed the same routine almost every day. I left for work at 8, drove home around 5, reheated leftovers, watched whatever random show was playing in the background, and went to bed before midnight. Nothing about my life felt dramatic enough for something strange to happen. The apartment itself was small but clean, with beige carpet that still smelled faintly of detergent, and a bedroom just big enough for a queen mattress and a cheap dresser. Across from the bed sat a narrow closet with 2 sliding doors that never lined up correctly. One panel always stayed cracked open by an inch or 2, no matter how hard I shoved it closed. At first it annoyed me because I liked things neat, but after a while I stopped paying attention to it. The first week there felt normal, except for how quiet everything became after dark. I wasn't used to sleeping alone in total silence. In my parents' house, there had always been TVs playing, footsteps upstairs, pipes rattling, dogs barking outside. Here, after midnight, the building felt empty in a way that almost pressed against my ears. I started hearing tiny sounds from the closet during those late hours. Not loud noises, just faint shifting, like hangers touching or fabric brushing together. I told myself it was airflow from the vent or the building settling. Every apartment makes noises at night. That's what I kept repeating to myself whenever I woke up and noticed the closet standing slightly open again. One night, I even pushed a chair against the doors before going to bed, just to prove they were sliding open on their own. When I woke up, the chair had tipped sideways onto the carpet, and the closet door was cracked open exactly the same amount as before. I remember standing there in my work uniform, staring at it longer than I should have, feeling embarrassed that something so small bothered me that much. The night everything changed started like any other weekday. I came home tired after covering a double shift because another receptionist called in sick. I microwaved frozen pasta, left the TV running for background noise, and fell asleep on top of my blanket without changing clothes. Sometime during the night, I woke up suddenly with that strange feeling people get when they know something interrupted their sleep, even if they don't know what. My room was dark, except for the faint orange glow of a parking lot, light shining through the blinds. The digital clock beside my bed read 2:41 a.m. I lay there listening, half asleep, trying to figure out what had pulled me awake. Then I heard it, a quiet sound that didn't belong. It came from inside the closet, slow breathing, not loud, not dramatic, just steady enough that I could separate it from my own. My chest tightened immediately. I stayed perfectly still, listening harder. The sound stopped. For a few seconds, there was complete silence, and I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Then I heard a whisper, soft enough to make me question it, but clear enough that I knew I hadn't dreamed it. Emily. My body locked up so fast it hurt. I stared toward the closet without moving my head. The gap between the doors looked darker than the rest of the room, like the black space inside somehow absorbed the little light around it. I waited for another sound, another whisper, anything. Nothing happened. My mouth felt dry. I finally reached for my phone on the nightstand and turned on the flashlight. The beam hit the closet directly. Hanging shirts, shoes on the floor, plastic storage bins, nothing unusual, no person, no animal, no reason for what I heard. I forced myself out of bed and crossed the room, feeling stupid and scared at the same time. I shoved both closet doors shut until they touched, then stood there for a second with my hand still pressed against the frame. That was when I heard a faint sound behind the doors. Not movement this time, a tiny exhale, like someone trying not to be heard. I backed away slowly and climbed into bed without turning the light off. I don't remember falling asleep again, but when morning came, the closet stood slightly open, and I couldn't stop staring at the dark line between the doors, wondering why part of me felt like something on the other side had been waiting for me to wake up. I barely slept after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying the whisper in my head, trying to convince myself there had to be a normal explanation. By morning, I felt embarrassed for being scared of a closet door, but the feeling didn't leave. I went through my usual routine anyway. I showered, got dressed, stopped for coffee, and drove to work like nothing was wrong. The entire day felt off. I kept zoning out while answering phones, hearing my own name in my memory over and over. The voice had not sounded distorted or ghostly. That was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. It sounded exactly like me, down to the softness in the way I pronounce certain words. During lunch, I searched online for explanations. Sleep hallucinations, stress, anxiety, apartment noises. Everything sounded reasonable until I remembered how awake I had been. By the time I drove home, I had already decided I needed proof. I stopped at a department store and bought a cheap indoor security camera people usually use for pets or babysitters. I told myself that once I recorded the room overnight, I would see nothing unusual and finally relax. Back home, I cleaned the apartment to keep busy, trying not to look directly at the closet. I placed the camera on top of my dresser, facing the bed and the sliding doors, then tested the angle twice to make sure everything stayed visible. That night I left the bedroom lamp on because the darkness suddenly felt too heavy. I lay in bed pretending to scroll through my phone, but I was really watching the closet out of the corner of my eye. Nothing moved. Hours passed. The quiet hum of traffic outside and distant plumbing from another apartment slowly pulled me into sleep. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was already coming through the blinds. For 1 second, I felt relieved. Nothing happened. Then I looked across the room. The closet doors were wide open, not cracked, not slightly shifted. Fully open, exposing every hanging shirt and empty shoebox inside. My stomach dropped so hard, I actually felt dizzy. I knew I had shut them before sleeping. I remembered checking them twice. I grabbed the camera immediately and sat on the edge of my bed to watch the footage. At first, it showed exactly what I expected. Hours of stillness, the room lit dimly by the lamp. I fast-forwarded through midnight, then 1 in the morning, then nearly 2. Around 2:17 a.m., the closet doors moved, slowly. There was no sudden jerk, no shaking, just a steady slide like someone opening them carefully from inside. My throat tightened. I leaned closer to the screen. A minute later, I saw myself sit upright in bed. The movement looked wrong, too stiff. My shoulders straightened all at once, and I turned toward the closet without hesitation. I watched myself stand and walk across the room. The strange part wasn't that I moved. It was how calm I looked. No confusion, no hesitation, just a slow walk directly into the closet. I disappeared behind the hanging clothes. The room stayed empty for almost 3 full minutes. I checked the timestamp twice because it felt impossible. Then I stepped back out. My face looked blank. I climbed into bed and lay down exactly the same way I had before. The recording ended there. I sat frozen, replaying it again and again, trying to remember even 1 second of standing up. Nothing came back. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the camera. I zoomed in on the footage, hoping to prove there was some glitch or shadow tricking me. During the moment I entered the closet, something shifted behind the clothes. It lasted less than a second. A pale shape moved deeper into the darkness, like another body stepping backward to make room for me. I shut the video off instantly. The apartment felt different after seeing that. Smaller, closed in. I spent the rest of the afternoon unable to focus on anything except the closet. By evening, I called my friend Tara and asked if she could stay the night. I told her I just felt uneasy being alone. I didn't tell her everything because saying it out loud made it sound insane. When she arrived, we ordered takeout and tried to joke around like normal, but I kept catching myself staring toward the bedroom hallway. Around midnight, we finally went to sleep. Tara took an air mattress beside my bed. Before turning off the light, I made sure the closet doors were completely shut. I checked them with my own hands. I remember that clearly because sometime in the middle of the night, Tara suddenly sat upright beside me, breathing hard in the darkness, and whispered one sentence that made my entire body go numb. "Emily, were you just talking?" Tara's question stayed in my head the entire rest of the night. I remember lying there completely still after she whispered it, too afraid to even breathe loudly. The room felt thick with silence, like the air itself had changed. I asked her what she meant, and she said she woke up because she heard me talking softly. She thought I was on the phone until she realized I was asleep beside her. Then she heard my voice again, except it came from across the room, from the closet. We turned the lamp on together, both moving too fast, almost knocking into each other. The bedroom looked perfectly normal. The closet doors stayed shut. Nothing moved. Tara laughed nervously and said, "Maybe she dreamed it," but I could tell from her face she didn't believe that. Neither did I. We didn't go back to sleep. Instead, we sat in the living room with every light on until sunrise, pretending to watch TV while both of us kept glancing toward the hallway. Around 6 in the morning, Tara left for work, and I promised I'd stay somewhere else that night. But after she drove away, I stood in the parking lot staring up at my bedroom window. The thought of leaving without understanding what was happening bothered me more than staying scared. I wish I had walked away then. Instead, I went back upstairs. The apartment felt strangely quiet during daylight, almost innocent again. I walked into the bedroom slowly, expecting to feel that same heavy fear, but everything looked ordinary. I opened the closet doors and started pulling things out. Shoes, storage boxes, jackets, winter clothes I hadn't unpacked yet. I told myself I was just proving there was nothing there. At the very back of the closet, behind hanging shirts, I noticed the wall looked uneven. One section didn't sit flush like the rest. The paint color matched, but the shape felt slightly off, like a repair job done quickly. I ran my fingers along the surface and found a narrow seam stretching vertically from near the floor to shoulder height. My pulse sped up immediately. I pressed against it without thinking. The panel shifted inward slightly. Dust drifted down near my shoes. I froze, staring at the line in the wall. Then I pulled harder. The section opened slowly toward me with a dry scraping sound, revealing a narrow, hollow space hidden behind the closet. The smell hit first. Damp insulation mixed with something older, almost sour, like a basement that had stayed sealed for years. I used the flashlight on my phone and aimed it into the opening. The space looked narrow but deep, wedged between apartment walls, maybe 3 feet wide. I crouched and leaned closer without fully stepping inside. Pieces of insulation covered the floor, along with old wood scraps and dark stains that spread across the concrete beneath them. Near the back sat a metal folding chair facing directly toward the closet opening, positioned like someone had spent time sitting there. My stomach turned. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt used. The flashlight beam drifted lower and landed on long scratches carved into the wall studs. Thin lines grouped together in clusters, like someone counting days. There were too many to count quickly. I felt a cold wave pass through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. Beneath the chair, I spotted a small rectangular object, half buried in dust. I reached carefully and pulled it out. It was an old cassette recorder, the kind people used before smartphones existed. The plastic casing looked yellowed with age. I brought it into the living room and searched drawers until I found batteries from an old remote. When I pressed play, static filled the room, then breathing, slow, shaky breathing. After several seconds, a woman's voice started speaking quietly. She keeps talking to me at night. The sound made my skin tighten instantly. The woman sounded exhausted, scared, like she had been crying for hours. She said she heard herself calling from the walls. She said it knew things only she would know. The recording crackled, followed by a loud bang somewhere in the background. Then her breathing turned panicked. "It wants me to come closer," she whispered. I felt frozen in place, listening. Suddenly there was scraping on the tape, followed by screaming so sharp I nearly dropped the recorder. The sound cut out mid-cry. Silence followed. I sat there, unable to move, staring toward the hallway. That was when I heard a faint sound from the bedroom, a soft shuffle, slow movement coming from inside the closet. I stood automatically, every muscle tight, and walked toward the doorway. The hidden panel remained open. Darkness filled the space behind it. Then something shifted deep inside the wall, just enough to catch the edge of light. I stopped breathing. A pale shape stood farther back in the cavity, too thin to understand clearly. It leaned slightly forward. Then, in my own voice, calm and familiar, it whispered, "Emily, come closer." I ran out of the apartment so fast I forgot my purse inside. I sat in my car with the doors locked, trying to breathe normally while staring up at my bedroom window. My hand shook too badly to start the engine at first. I kept replaying what I had just seen in the wall cavity. I wanted to believe it had been a trick of light or my imagination feeding off panic, but I knew what I heard. The voice had sounded exactly like me again, calm and familiar, like someone calling from another room. After almost 20 minutes of sitting in the parking lot, I called the police. I told them I found a hidden space behind my closet wall and thought someone may have been living there. I avoided mentioning the voice because even saying it in my head sounded ridiculous. 2 officers arrived about 30 minutes later. I waited outside while they searched the apartment. Watching strangers walk through my front door felt unreal, like I was observing someone else's life. Eventually, one officer asked me to come upstairs and point out the hidden panel. The apartment already felt different, walking back inside. The air smelled stale, like something had been opened that should have stayed sealed. I showed them the closet and stepped back while they inspected the space. One officer crawled partly into the opening with a flashlight, while the other stayed beside me taking notes. The officer inside suddenly went quiet. I watched him stop moving for several seconds. Then he backed out slowly and exchanged a look with his partner. They asked me to wait in the kitchen. I could hear low voices from the bedroom, but couldn't make out words. After about 15 minutes, one officer walked over carrying a clear evidence bag. Inside was part of a human jaw with several teeth still attached. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grip the counter. The officer asked if I knew anything about previous tenants or renovation work done in the apartment. I told him no. He explained they were calling detectives and that I shouldn't stay there anymore until the investigation finished. They taped off the bedroom before leaving. I packed a small overnight bag under supervision, avoiding even looking toward the closet. As I stepped outside, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The bedroom window blinds moved slightly, even though the glass was shut. The movement looked deliberate, like someone standing behind them watching me leave. I checked into a roadside motel 20 minutes away because I didn't know where else to go. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet, but it felt safer than my apartment. I locked the door twice and pushed a chair beneath the handle out of habit. Sleep never came. Around midnight, I sat cross-legged on the bed, searching the building address online. I found articles about property sales and inspection reports, nothing unusual at first. Then I discovered a local news clipping from 2004 about a woman who disappeared from the same apartment complex. Her name was Laura Bennett. She was 26, lived alone, and vanished without explanation. Police never found evidence of forced entry. The article included a blurry photo of her smiling outside a grocery store. She looked ordinary, the kind of person you pass every day without remembering. I kept reading. On an old neighborhood forum, someone mentioned rumors about strange noises in the walls years earlier. Another person wrote that a tenant used to complain about hearing her own voice at night. My heart started pounding again. The details felt too close to ignore. I stared at Laura's picture for several minutes, wondering if the tape recorder belonged to her. Then the motel room phone rang suddenly beside the bed. The sound hit so hard, I nearly dropped my laptop. I answered after the third ring, expecting the front desk. At first there was silence, then breathing, slow, uneven breathing. My throat tightened instantly. I listened for a second longer, hoping someone would speak. Instead, I heard my own voice whisper through the receiver. "Why did you leave?" I froze completely. The voice sounded distant, almost like it came from a hallway far away. I slammed the phone down so hard it bounced against the table. My pulse pounded in my ears. I packed my things immediately and drove to Tara's apartment without calling first. She let me stay on her couch after hearing how shaken I sounded. We talked for hours while she tried reassuring me that police were involved now and everything would make sense eventually. Around 4 in the morning, I woke to soft footsteps moving through her apartment. I opened my eyes and saw Tara standing in the hallway entrance, staring toward me in complete darkness. At first, I thought she was sleepwalking. Then she tilted her head slowly to one side, too far to look natural, and said one word in a voice that did not belong to her. "Emily." Seeing Tara standing there in the dark, with my voice coming from her mouth, broke something inside me. I remember backing away so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. Before I could reach her, she collapsed forward onto the hallway floor like her legs gave out beneath her. The sound of her body hitting hardwood snapped me out of my panic. I rushed over and shook her shoulders until she opened her eyes. She looked confused, exhausted, and completely unaware of what had just happened. When I asked why she was standing over me, she stared blankly and said she had been asleep the entire time. I wanted to believe her. The fear in her expression looked real. We stayed awake until sunrise with every light on, sitting across from each other in silence. Around 7 in the morning, Tara called her sister and packed a bag to stay there for a few days. She said she needed space to think. I understood. Neither of us mentioned what happened in the hallway again. After she left, I drove aimlessly for hours because I didn't know where else to go. The apartment was under investigation. Tara's place no longer felt safe. I ended up renting a tiny studio across town with month-to-month payments because I didn't want anything permanent. The new place had no walk-in closet, just a metal clothing rack beside the wall. For a while, I convinced myself the nightmare ended. Weeks passed quietly. I went back to work. I started grocery shopping again, cooking dinner, watching late-night TV like I used to. Life slowly began to feel ordinary. Then the dreams started. At first they were random flashes, narrow hallways, dark spaces between walls, a woman whispering behind closed doors. Eventually, the dreams became identical every night. I stood inside my old bedroom, staring at the closet. The hidden panel remained open. Darkness waited behind it. I always heard breathing before waking up suddenly. The dreams left me exhausted. Around the same time, I began hearing sounds in the studio apartment after midnight. Light tapping behind the wall beside my bed. 3 soft knocks. A pause. Then 3 more. I blamed neighbors at first. Apartment buildings always carry noise. But these sounds happened only after I turned off the lights. Every single night, around the same time, the tapping returned. I ignored it for almost 2 weeks. Then one night I heard something that made my blood run cold. A soft whisper near my bed. "Emily." I sat upright instantly, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. The room stayed dark except for a streetlight shining through cheap blinds. I listened carefully, barely breathing. Nothing moved. I reached for the lamp and turned it on. The tapping stopped immediately. I searched the apartment anyway, checking the bathroom, kitchen, even behind the shower curtain. Nothing. When I returned to bed, I noticed a thin crack running upward along the wall beside my mattress. I was sure it hadn't been there before. It stretched from the baseboard to shoulder height, narrow enough to miss unless you looked closely. I touched it with my fingertips. The drywall felt colder than the rest of the wall. I stepped back slowly. Then I heard movement behind it, not loud, just a faint shifting sound, like fabric brushing against wood. My stomach tightened instantly. Dust drifted from the crack. A smell slipped through the room. Damp, stale air mixed with something rotten underneath. I grabbed my phone and backed toward the kitchen. The crack widened slightly with a soft popping sound. My pulse pounded in my throat. Then a voice came through the wall. My voice, calm, familiar. "Found you." I froze completely. The drywall split another inch. Something pale moved in the darkness behind it. I could only see part of it, but it looked close enough to touch. I dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator answered. I tried speaking, but couldn't force words out. Before I said anything, another voice came through the phone line. My own voice again, clearer this time. "She's here." The line disconnected instantly. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Behind me, the crack spread farther across the wall. A piece of drywall bent outward slightly. Then I heard scratching from inside. Slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging carefully along the other side. I didn't wait to see more. I ran barefoot out of the apartment carrying only my keys and phone. I drove until sunrise without stopping. That was 8 months ago. Since then I haven't signed another lease. I moved from motel to motel, never staying long enough to feel settled. I sleep with lights on and cameras recording every night. Most recordings show nothing, but sometimes I wake up to videos of myself sitting upright in bed while still asleep, staring toward whatever closet or dark corner exists in the room. Last week, in a motel outside Indianapolis, I reviewed footage from 3:11 a.m. The closet door slowly opened by itself. I sat up without opening my eyes. Then I smiled faintly and whispered something toward the darkness. A second voice answered from inside the closet. My voice, perfectly clear. "Come home."